Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Future Show. We are live, and boy, oh boy, what a Friday this is about to become. Or actually, it's not Friday. I missed my job on Friday. It's about to become a pretty exciting Monday morning as we transition from Sunday night into the market open. Obviously, I can't wear a hat because, there's no cap about the fact that we are going higher. Folks, we are going higher. Ladies and gentlemen, the futures, for those that haven't seen it, are green. Green across the board. S&P 500 up 1%, the NASDAQ up 1%, small caps up 1.13, the VIX down 7.8, which is great to see. The VIX was at 25 last week. Now potentially going to open up below 18, potentially even below 17, where it was 2 weeks ago. And then you got the Dow Jones basically hitting an all-time high at 47,530, up almost 1%. And this is because it likely is signaling that we have a trade deal with China. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to China, so we'll talk about that. But it's about to be an exciting overnight markets. That's to say the least. Dude, I just didn't feel like wearing a hat today. That's all. I didn't feel like wearing a hat. This is the first time I actually took my hat off in a while. So it's not like the official hairstyle or anything. I just said, you know what, screw it. I don't care. So we took the hat off, and the hair is going all crazy, but there you go. I'm sorry I couldn't make it on Friday, guys. I don't know what happened on Friday, but after the close or after the open, I just didn't feel good, bro. Like, I didn't feel. My voice was being weird. My legs were shivering. Like, I think it's the hot to cold weather. Something happened on Friday. I even called Steve. There he is, right there in the chat. We'll be going over to his alternative assets weekly once we're done with the future show. But I even called him. I was like, bro, I don't think I can do the show. And he was like, what? You're gonna miss the show? I'm like, I really don't like missing my show. You guys know me. I've only missed the show because of the dentist, which is a good reason to miss the show if you have a dentist that looks as nice as mine. And then I'm traveling. Otherwise, I don't miss the show. So I don't know what happened on Friday. I just didn't feel good. But I'm back and very excited to be here. Now, a couple things before we get into everything we got going on. We got 12 minutes until the overnight markets open. And then after those overnight markets where these prices are about to be crazy, Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything's mooning. Then we'll get into the reasons for why all of this is happening, along with obviously what's going on with China, which is kind of creating this impact. Bitcoin got to 115.5. We're at 114 right now. And then Ethereum finally breaking over 4,000, 4,100, which is very nice to see from Ethereum. Over the weekend, I read a book. And when I mean I actually read the book, I mean I was up last night. I didn't read the entire thing. I still have a couple chapters left, but I legit read a book. So there is a book coming out called The Philosopher in the Valley by Michael Steinberger. He is someone who this is basically an autobiography on Karp. And before the market futures stream right now, I interviewed him for the past 2 hours. And it was fascinating to interview a guy who Karp had given a lot of access to over the past 5 years. And that's why I think I read the book. There's two takeaways from this. Number one, I realized if I actually care about the subject, I'm willing to read. Like, I was up last night. I can barely watch a movie for 5 minutes before checking Twitter. I was reading through the book. I was licking my finger to get to the next page. Like, if I'm interested in it, I'll read it. Number two, it reminded me how much I love to read. And I think it's maybe because I've been writing more on the Substack. And so obviously, and I read every day. I read a lot of research and articles and stuff, but I don't read books anymore. I kind of want to get back to reading books. I mean, if it's something that I actually care about, I feel like I can get through the book. And, it really felt good to not get distracted by notifications or YouTube or anything, and just sit down and read. Like, it just felt like peaceful. I don't know if it's because if I'm getting older or something, but I don't know. I want to get back to reading. So the point is, this is an amazing book. I think the interview will be really nice. A lot of you guys will get to hear parts about Karp that you've never heard about before. I got to the epilogue, and I'm in the book. My mom freaked out last night when she saw this, but I'm in the book, and it's kind of crazy. It's a small mention, but I'll show you guys right here. I'll read it. In early December 2024, a few weeks after the presidential election, Palantir hosted an AIP event in the New York office. When I arrived that morning, Karp was deep in conversation with Amit Kukreja, an amateur stock commentator who was possibly Palantir's and Karp's biggest fan in the retail investor community. He was now regularly invited to the company's events and had become its de facto human mascot. As Karp chatted with Mr. Kukreja, he noticed a woman approaching from across the room and exclaimed, "Oh, to what do we have this honor?" And then he talks about who the woman was and why she was even meeting Karp. But that all happened. That all happened. Like Karp and I were speaking. We were having a conversation December of 2024. In fact, the conversation was about how much the institutional investors missed Palantir and just like how excited he was. This was right after they got into the NASDAQ and the S&P. So this was 2 months after they got into those indices. And Michael Steinberger was there. He was, I guess he was observing everything that was happening. And then he ended up putting it into the epilogue. So that was kind of crazy seeing this last night. I did not think I would get a spot in the book, but yeah, I'm in the book, and so it's pretty cool stuff. I'm not getting paid. I mean, there's no copyright or use of my name or anything like that. I got to the epilogue last night. I was like, holy crap, I'm in the freaking book. So it's pretty cool stuff. I think you guys will enjoy the book, and yeah, I think you guys will enjoy the interview as well, because there's a lot of parts about Karp that no one knows about, including the fact that Karp is half black. A lot of people don't know that he's biracial. And so there's a lot of different elements of his identity, how he thinks about politics, the world, like why he never got married. It's a really good book on a lot of those subjects, and his dyslexia, all that stuff. So I think when the interview comes out, you guys will like it, and it should be pretty fun. Yeah, I got called the human mascot, dude. That was crazy. I'm not getting any royalties on this. I got to the epilogue last night. I was like, holy crap, my name's there. I told my mom. She was like, why is your name there? I was like, I don't know, but my name's there. I'm there. And obviously it was a metaphor for like the retail investor. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Black and Jewish as well. Yeah. A lot of people still don't know that. There's a lot of parts of his to his identity that people don't know, but there you go. All right. So we got 8 minutes until the overnight markets open. I am very excited. Why am I excited? Because we're going higher. It's that simple. We are going higher. And the reason we're going higher is because it looks like from everything I've seen in the past 24 hours, we are getting a deal with China. Now, I know that this entire year has basically been a metaphor embodied through this picture right here. As everyone can see right here on the screen, this picture is literally the basis for how this year has gone. But as Mr. Stephen Fiorillo would said, higher. We are going higher. And we're going to get into the earnings conversation this week, guys. This week is going to be crazy. We're going to talk about the Fed because we got a Fed cut coming up this week. Not to mention we got, forget SoFi earnings, which by the way, I did buy another 500 shares of SoFi on Friday. So your boys loaded up 1,000 shares. I didn't get to tell you guys because I didn't go live. But my average is now like $29.05. 1,000 shares. I'm loaded up, and hopefully Noto can take us to the promised land. But we got SoFi on Tuesday. We have Meta, Google, and Microsoft on Wednesday, all at the same time. And then on top of that, you have the FOMC meeting right before all those companies report. I mean, this is going to be one of the most crazy weeks I think we've ever had in stock market history. I don't remember the last time we had Meta, Microsoft, and Alphabet happen at the same time. I've seen Microsoft and Alphabet happen together. I've seen Meta and Apple happen together. But all three of them, I mean, that day, Wednesday after close, is going to be madness trying to cover everything. But it's going to be wild. And then you have SoFi and PayPal on Tuesday. You have Amazon and Apple on Thursday. We just have a lot of companies. And then you have that Fed rate cut on Wednesday morning. So this is going to be a wild week. And the way to make this week even more special is if we can get some real negotiations done with China. We've been talking about this China story for the past, basically call it 9 days now, ever since the whole kind of Trump is mad at China thing broke out, which caused the S&P 500 to fall 3% for the first time in 5 months. And I think the kind of theme of this entire show has been they're negotiating, it's leverage. And at the end of the day, we've been through this playbook a billion times. I think a lot of us bought the dip back on October 10th. I mean, we know historically the stock market had the largest inflows it's seen in the past 15 years on that Friday. And I think a lot of us bought the dip last Friday, not this Friday, because this Friday we closed at all-time highs, but it wasn't last Friday, it was last Wednesday when things got really rocky. And you had like Palantir go to 169, NVIDIA go to 177. Like people ended up buying the dip. And I think those dip buyers are going to be rewarded because essentially, based on what we've heard today, it looks like we got a deal. We'll talk more about the deal, but here's one video from Basant this morning highlighting that this deal might actually be happening.
This was the 5th meeting that I've had with my Chinese counterpart, the Vice Premier, Hu Lifeng, and we covered a wide range of issues, and I think we've reached a substantial framework for the 2 leaders who will meet in Korea next Thursday. So, on the table, the president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that, so that the tariffs will be averted. And we have a regular quarterly meeting with the Chinese. It was scheduled for November 10th. Or before November 10th. I don't think we will have to have that. So we have been rolling the tariffs quarterly. So we agreed on that. We also agreed on substantial agriculture purchases for U.S. farmers. We agreed that the Chinese would begin to help us with the precursor chemicals for this terrible fentanyl epidemic that's ravaging our country. So I would say that it was a very good meeting overall.
Okay, so you got Basent saying it was a very good meeting overall. There's a bunch of more clips, and we'll talk about some of those clips from Basent and Greer and all those guys. But, dude, even the Chinese, and again, we're going to go real deep into this story. We got 3 minutes until the overnight markets open, but the Chinese embassy tweeted that these 3 bullet points, that they have agreed to make full use of the China-U.S. economic and trade consultation mechanism, maintain close communication on respective concerns in the economic and trade fields, and promote the healthy, stable, sustainable, healthy and stable development of economic and trade relations to benefit both countries and contribute to global prosperity. I mean, that does not sound like a trade war. Those 3 bullet points right there, which is word for word what the Chinese embassy tweeted today, does not feel like a trade war. It does not feel like China hates the U.S. or the U.S. hates China. It looks like, and again, we don't have a deal, but Basent and Lee set up the negotiations for what a framework for a deal would look like. And that framework for a deal is going to be established hopefully on November 1st when Trump meets with Xi, or I think it's October 30th. It's in that time frame, October 30th to November 1st that they're meeting. And look, if we come to any reasonable conclusion and you've got the Fed rate cut and you've got earnings coming in a much better way than people have expected. I mean, so far, 80% of the companies that have reported in the S&P 500 have beat on earnings. We looked at on Thursday, whether it was Intel or Deckers, and maybe their stocks didn't cooperate because a lot of those stocks were already up a lot year to date, but the companies beat by an average of like 15 to 25% on EPS on earnings, which means margins are going up. I mean, I think we're going higher. I think we are going higher, and it is exciting to see. Now, here's the poll I'll put real quick in the chat. Hire or sell the news? Hire or sell the news? I mean, there's a world where it could be a sell the news. That could definitely happen. We did close at an all-time high on Friday. S&P likely opens up, I think, closer to that 680 level in the next 2 minutes. But if it is a sell the news, dude, it's also going to be a buy the dip. Like every single thing this year, every single opportunity that we've had has been a buy the dip. And I don't think that necessarily changes. Now, the question around a lot of those momentum stocks that took a meaningful drawdown over the past couple of weeks, I don't know if they're going back to all-time highs. Maybe that's possible. But even if they don't, again, it's not the craziest idea, right? Because some of those stocks that did take a drawdown, maybe that drawdown is enough. And a lot of those stocks, got hit 30, 40%. And now they can go higher, even if they don't get back to all-time highs, or they can stabilize in a range, which is one of the best things you could ask for stocks that are up 5 to 7x for the year, even after that 40% decline. So I think there's a lot of healthy components to what has happened over the past couple of weeks, even though it was painful for all of us to deal with. But again, every time there's been any level of pain, what do? We bought the dip, or at least the majority of retail bought the dip. And I think that has continued to play out. And again, it's not just buying the dip for the hell of buying the dip. It's because the earnings momentum that is out there continues to prove that buying the dip makes sense. And it feels like 7,000 S&P 500 might be in play because of that ability to buy the dip. Here we go. Overnight markets are open. Let's see what we've got. Hoodie, 142. That's up 1.5% as we open the markets. Palantir, 186. That is green as we open the overnight markets. Tesla, 438. That's up 1%. NVIDIA, 188, trying to get back to that 195 level that NVIDIA was at a couple weeks ago. AMD, wow, 257 AMD. Oh my, AMD closed at 253 last week. 257. Google right there, 261. We saw Google get to 260 a while ago. SoFi, I'm happy I bought another 500 shares on Friday. Let's see if we can get to 35. on these earnings on Tuesday. SoFi right there, 29.63. Amazon up 1%, 226. Meta, 744. Haven't seen Meta at 740 since September. Reddit, that's up 1.4%. PayPal's up 1%. Elf is up 1%. Apple's up 1%. Where is BMNR? I'm going to guess 54. I'm going to guess 54 if it loads up. Legends being slow. There it is. 54, 53. Okay, cool. 53. Still a 5% move. Not too bad. You got Bitcoin right there at 114. SMCI 49.10. If you bought the dip at 47.50, not too bad for SMCI. Enphase is up. Microsoft is up. Palo Alto is up. Nebius should be higher. Nebius is indeed higher. 94 to 120 on Nebius. Iren, I imagine, is pushing 65. Iren 66.75. Where's SPY? Oh, we didn't even check SPY. Where's SPY? Where's SPY? Oh my goodness, 680. Holy guacamole. 680. I mean, I think we all had a feeling it would open close to that. There, it closed at what, 678 on Friday? Boom. SoFi 30. SoFi, there it is. SoFi 30. SoFi 29.70, 97. You got SoFi 30 right there. Palantir 187. Boom. Bought the dip at 172 on Palantir last week. Also bought the dip at 177 on NVIDIA. I mean, if you bought the dip on pretty much everything, you're probably doing well. How about Duolingo? Duolingo up 1.6%. TFC, that's up a little bit. Iren up 6.5. I think all the Bitcoin miners should be moving heavy. Look at that. Legend slowing down. That's how you know a bunch of people are checking Robinhood right now. Let's pull this up right here. SoFi right there, 29.97. There you go. Let's go back to these Bitcoin miners. Iren's up, Cypher's up, CleanSpark. Some of these don't trade overnight, but some of them do. Hive is up, Bitfarms 486, Marathon 3.6, Riot's up 3.4, Gas is up 4.2. Does Oklo trade overnight? I don't know. Legends down for you guys too, right? Yeah. Oklo is up another 4% overnight. So again, Oklo was at 150 when it started the decline last week from 190. Fell all the way to 117. Now it's back to 140. Does it go back to 190? I don't know. But the fact that it had that kind of shakeout, and it wasn't just Oklo, it was a lot of different companies, I think that just set up the move for the next leg higher. And whatever, company you wanted to buy the dip on is the company that you got a choice to buy the dip on. But pretty much everything gave you an opportunity. Some of them better than others. Rocket Lab, how's that doing? Does that trade overnight? Rocket Lab, that doesn't trade on Legend overnight. It might trade on Webull. Nebius 123. Rocket Lab on Webull is at 65.96. No, never mind. That does trade overnight. Okay, so that's green. Roblox, that's up 1%. Uber, that's up 1%. Coinbase, 4%. That's a $15 move. Hoodie got to 120 last week. Anyone who bought that dip on Hoodie, you got some green. Nebius, again, that continues to go green as well. Open Door, where's Open Door? I don't think they trade overnight. It's up a little bit. Did it close at these levels? Open Door, I don't know why that doesn't trade overnight. That should trade overnight. It closed at 8:02. It's at 8:30. Whenever it trades on Legend, that's very low liquidity. It should be on the mobile app for it to have like a lot more buyers coming in. But you do have some people putting up orders, and that's why the stock goes higher. CoreWeave, 135. That's up 2.3. MicroStrategy, what do we have there? Wow, the Nikkei. The Nikkei is moving. MSTR, that's up 3.7%. Nikkei right now. Oh, my. Yeah, Nikkei 225 just crossed 50,000. Goodness gracious, bro. Guys, this might be a melt up. This might be a real serious melt up. Amcor, that stock, wow, 35.20. Shout out to Amcor. Look at that. Look at that. Again, this thing fell to 28 on the Trump tweet back on October 10th. Nice move for Amcor. There you go. NVIDIA pushing 190, 189.42. ASST, this one's going to get a lot of buzz. 154 right here. Mike Alfred took a position in this of $1 million. And as a result of him taking that position, I don't know enough about ASST, to be honest. It's like a Bitcoin treasury, and there's maybe some other components to it. But yeah, I mean, he bought it at 95 cents. It's at $1.54. I mean, he has a pretty big retail audience, so you might get a lot of people that pile into this one. 154 in the overnight markets for ASST. S&P still at 681, and then AMD 260. AMD is at 260. Beckert says, agreed. This feels like the start of another melt up. Yeah, and maybe it's a healthier start to another melt up because we already had a little bit of a drawdown across the entire market, right? It's not like we're going from 673 to 680. We went from 673 to 647, and some names got hit worse than others, but pretty much everything took at least like minimum 5% hit. A lot of things took way worse than 5% of a hit. The market took a 3% hit. And now it feels like a more healthier way to get to these levels. It really does. Which is nice to see. BMNR right there, 53.21. How about Chinese stocks? BABA, that's up 2.9. That should be up. JD, I know a lot of people are in JD. That's up 2.74. KWeb in general, the Chinese Internet Tech ETF, wow, that's up 2%. That's a big move for KWeb. And that continues to go green. Yes, Amcor does have earnings tomorrow, so that's going to be something that we look for, or at least for anyone who cares about that stock. But, this is a good backdrop to have a stronger earnings. ASTS, that's up 1.42%. HIMS trying to get back into the 50s. How about Oscar? Oscar is up 2.64. Baidu is up 3.21. Let's check on Quantum. IONQ, that's up 4.5%. Uber is up 1%. MicroStrategy is up 4%. I mean, I don't see anything that's red. Does anyone see anything that's red? Like actually red? I think everything. Oh, Beyond Meat, does that trade overnight? Beyond Meat? I don't think it trades overnight, but it's down 3.89%. I mean, Beyond Meat took a pretty nasty dip from $8.50 down to $2. I saw a lot of Twitter screen posts of people that have like 500,000 shares, 800,000 shares. I mean, there is definitely an army that is forming for Beyond Meat. I don't know how many people are in that army, but there are people that have loaded up and they really do think it's coming back. And they think, this is GameStop 2.0. And the reason for that, by the way, is not just because of whatever fundamental thesis they have on Beyond Meat, but it's that the short float on Beyond Meat is 161%. And because of that short float being literally, the shorts are borrowing shares that don't exist. This is exactly what happened with GameStop. That's why you have a lot of people thinking Beyond Meat can get squeezed. The rare earth stocks are red. That is fair. USAR, my goodness, down 13%. MP's down 5%. Okay, I guess. Obviously, I mean, if you have a trade deal with China for rare earth metals and minerals, a lot of the domestic manufacturers and miners for those stocks, they're not going to have that much demand, right? Or at least the perception is their demand is going to go down a little bit. So that's fair. Gold is also down 1.32. Gold is also down 1.32. Silver is down 1.29. I mean, if we have a melt up in assets, we might have a little bit of a meltdown. And I don't want to really say meltdown, but like a little bit of a stalling potentially. I don't think these things actually sell off to the point where you could call it a meltdown in commodities, because risk on might not mean gold and silver. I mean, objectively, risk on has always meant something besides gold. For Google right there, 262. Maybe that's when we see that play out. Maybe when we see that play out. SOFX, that is up 6% right here. I actually had dinner with Adam the other day. Adam had a pretty big position on SOFX and in terms of selling puts, not actually buying the stock. SoFi fell to 25. He just felt that it was stupid. And so he used the 2x leverage version of it to sell puts. And so, I mean, you have a lot of people that took advantage of volatility either through the leveraged ETFs, through buying options, buying shares. And on Tuesday, we're going to hopefully get a report that is pretty bullish for SoFi. Bitcoin, 114.77, trying to get back to 115. Reddit's pumping up. I've got a decent chunk of momentum across the market. Is AMD price justified? I think AMD is going to have to put up an earnings that continues to justify the re-rating. But overall, I mean, yeah, that OpenAI deal is $80 billion of revenue over the next 5 years. And again, next quarter, you're not going to see that revenue. You're probably not going to see it until closer to the second half of 2026. But if they can just give a good guide that, hey, like this revenue is baked in, you can definitely expect it, it's going to happen, and they can increase that fiscal year 2026 target and not grow 14%, I think the street's going to be really happy about it. I mean, AMD is now a $400 billion company, folks. $418 billion. This was one of the most hated semiconductor stocks. Retail really did believe in it. Corey right there, 135.88. So, I mean, look, have a lot of these names run like crazy, and they're going to need a phenomenal earnings to justify their multiple expansion. Yes, but that should be the burden. The burden should be for Hood and Palantir and NVIDIA and AMD to prove in SoFi that they deserve a multiple. And I have some confidence that some of these companies will be able to do it. Look at Amazon pushing 227. If anyone bought the dip at 214, 215, that was hopefully a nice time to get rewarded if Amazon doesn't revisit those lows. And then Circle, look at that, 4%. Circle was up 9% on Friday. Stablecoin company Tether just raised at $500 billion. So a lot of people are wondering what the valuation for a company like Circle should be, given it's in the same niche of stablecoins, one of the only publicly traded companies you can get exposure to for stablecoins. That's up another 4% as well. The Q's all-time highs on the NASDAQ. There you go, 622. 622. 22. What did you guys say in the chat? 85% say higher, 16% say sell the news. Okay, so the majority of people here think we are going higher. I mean, look, I'm looking for the bear case. I don't know if there's an easy bear case. And realistically, there hasn't been a bear case for the past 5 months ever since the tariff stuff. There are bearish things to be concerned about and to not worry about. And I think the biggest bearish case was just like there was a lot of stocks running for like probably not the most fundamental reason, but all of those took a drawdown and they all are probably not going to zero. Like they don't need to go to zero and they have enough potential to justify why people would be excited to buy the dip on them. It's just they're also not going to the moon while the market was being flat, which was happening a month ago. And that is all, I think pretty much all of it has been flushed out. There's probably still some pockets of it that feel toppy, but it's not as crazy as it was SoFi back above 30 when the meme stock ETF came out. When that ETF came out, I mean, a lot of people, I remember the sentiment that they just felt like this is getting a bit ridiculous. I think a lot of that has been flushed out. And given a lot of that flush out has happened and the market's been able to make a higher move and those stocks are now able to go higher in a more healthy way, I don't know what has to be the Fed's going to hike. The Fed's not hiking. That's not happening. So is Google going to mess up earnings? I mean, if Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon don't mess up earnings, I don't even think Apple, look at Broadcom, right? They're up almost 2%. I don't even think Apple's going to mess up earnings because Apple iPhone 17 demand has been incredible. Apple basically at all-time highs right here at 265. I think we got a good shot. And then if we got the China deal and the NVIDIA deal and all this other stuff, or not the NVIDIA deal, well, technically the NVIDIA deal of NVIDIA being able to sell chips to China, but the India deal, which Trump said over the weekend, they're closer to potentially getting into a conversation with that. I mean, you just have a lot of stuff that can be baked. Also, we're near the end of the year. End of the year, markets are up on average 4.7%. And by the way, the reason the market tends to be good towards the end of the year is because September and August tend to suck. So the market kind of rallies towards the end of the year. September and August were really good. Guess what sucked? October, to an extent, right now that we're recovering. But given October had that drawdown that we were all anticipating where it was going to happen September, August, now that that's happened, you know, if the market needed some level of volatility, we got it over the past couple of weeks. And maybe that allows us to make that next leg up. I think earnings are going to hopefully justify that going into the end of the year. Yeah, maybe Santa Claus is coming to town. And 70% of fund managers are underperforming. That is correct. That is also correct. All right, cool. So let's talk about some headlines. Let's get into it. Let's talk about what we've got going on. October may be fully intact. Tomorrow is my birthday, so it would be very nice to have a official all-time high across the board. I mean, dude, if Palantir could give me all-time highs on my birthday, that would be pretty nice. But it looks like unless anything changes, look at SoFi, 3016. Unless anything changes, maybe we stay with this all-time high going into Monday. I just looked at my portfolio. Dude, this is what I'm saying. This is why you just buy the dip and you shut the hell up when it comes to buying the dip. I'm up 144. Last week, I think at the worst of it, it was down 170. And then by the market close, it was down like 118. So we recovered like a little bit of that drawdown. And now it's just all back. I mean, this is why sometimes you just got to buy, especially if it's companies that you know there's opportunities in buying, and you just keep going. I would imagine a lot of people are seeing that happen to their portfolios right now. We just got to see Trump doing the deal for a minute, 100%. Trump doing the deal for me. And now we just got to see if this continues. All right, let's get into it. And let's talk about what's going on. We'll keep an eye on the overnight markets. If there's any crazy price action, let me know. But overall, UNH, look at that, up 1%. You're already seeing a decent chunk of excitement across the board, which is not too bad. Quarantine Quartet said, dude, I lost like 70,000 like 20 times this month. Yeah, I mean, the volatility of October has been gigantic. And I mean, we all knew October was one of the most volatile months of the year. I don't think a lot of us expected it just because of how good September and August were. And it's a little bit of recency bias and not knowing how to expect a downturn. But it looks like as we've dealt with it, we have some fundamental catalysts to get this moving. And that's what we got. All right, so let's keep going and let's talk about what happened. Let's start off with China. Thank you to everyone saying happy birthday from across the pond because it is October 27th. What time is it in the UK? Time in the UK. Oh, it's 12 a.m. in the UK. Okay, cool. So we turned 28 in the United Kingdom. Deeply, deeply appreciate you guys. Again, tomorrow on the close, we'll do a fun like birthday stream after the market close. Hopefully we get an all-time high on the close. And we're going to go through some pictures from like me when I was a kid, when I was in high school, all that stuff. So we have some fun pictures that I'll show everybody to kind of celebrate turning a year older. But we'll do that on close tomorrow. All right, so China, let's get into it. What happened in China? It looks like we have a deal, and it looks like that deal might manifest itself in a pretty exciting way. So I played the first clip of Basant talking about what's going on with China. Here's a couple more clips that are pretty important to take a look at. And this is ultimately what he said. Well, first, let's start off with Trump, who is in Malaysia, meeting with a bunch of different heads of state. And then we'll get into some of the Basant comments.
We're going to do well with China.
Let me share this real quick. Okay, here we go.
I think we're going to have a deal with China. We meet, as you know, in South Korea with President Xi. I think we're going to have a good deal with China. And they want to make a deal, and we want to make a deal. We've agreed to meet. We're going to meet then later in China, and we're going to meet in the U.S. in either Washington or at Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach. So, I think, a lot of these talks, when we meet, we've done a lot of discussions before we meet. We've done discussions with Brazil. So I think we're going to end up having a good deal for both countries. I think with China that's going to happen. And we have other deals, we have Japan, we have South Korea, we have a lot of meetings. But people seem to be very interested in China. I think we're going to have a very fair meeting with China. We're going to do well.
Okay, so you got Trump saying, I think we're going to have a very fair meeting with China, which is important for Trump to say, because it means that he's more likely to negotiate that we will indeed get a deal. And then this is what Basant had to say about the meetings that he had, which is the reason Trump is even confident about getting a deal done with China, because Basant seemed to have some good negotiations over the weekend.
Framework that will avoid that and allow us to discuss many other things with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers. I think we are going to be able to discuss more balanced trade. And I'm not going to get ahead of the two leaders, but I think that they will also be discussing President Trump's global peace plan that he's been so successful at, both here in Asia, the Middle East, and now he's looking to Ukraine, Russia.
Mr. Secretary, you said a couple of significant things. It sounds like you're saying you are not anticipating a 100% tariff against China on November 1st. And seems like you're saying that China is poised to purchase soybeans to open up those markets again?
I believe that we have the framework for the two leaders to have a very productive meeting for both sides. And I think it will be fantastic for U.S. citizens, for U.S. farmers, and for our country in general.
Okay, but you're not anticipating the 100% tariffs?
No, I'm not. And I'm also anticipating that we will get some kind of a deferral on the rare earth export controls that the Chinese had discussed.
Okay.
But again, this will all be, my counterpart, the vice premier, and I have set the framework, and it will be up to the two leaders to discuss the final terms.
Okay, well.
So Basant right there is not promising that a deal is officially done. He is saying, though, he has a lot of confidence that there's not going to be 100% tariffs, which is something that the market really cared about, right? Because that's why we had that drawdown in the first place. And he's also saying the rare earth export controls, which kind of caused all this controversy in the first place, likely are not going to be as bad as what he said before, which again is why the rare earth stocks are getting hit right here, because if there's a ton of Chinese rare earths coming in, then you don't need as much demand for some of the other names. But it also means that U.S. manufacturing and supply chains might not be in that much trouble, which was the reason why the S&P took that hit on October 10th. S&P right there, very close to 682. We touched it for a little bit. Right now it's 681.94. And as a result, it's bullish. I mean, it's hard to say that it's completely bearish. So I'm going to put a poll right here in the chat and ask here, do we finally get a China deal done? Let's call it by end of year. Remember back in July, Trump tweeted, or June, that they had a deal done with China, and he was talking about how they're going to let Chinese immigrants go to Harvard and stuff. Like it didn't really feel like a deal. It was just something they said. I think there is a question on, hey, will this actually result in something meaningful? But if it does, I think we're going higher. And if we are going higher based on that, then that is not going to be the worst thing in the world. Here's another part of Bessent's interview where he talked about the pain that he understands the farmers feel like because he's also a soybean farmer.
I did mean the second term. I know they have met before. The president has also said he does want our farmers to be taken care of. You did mention that China has been boycotting American soybeans and American farmers have really suffered. Do you see a real light at the end of the tunnel there? They may allow soybeans again?
Well, Martha, in case you don't know it, I'm actually a soybean farmer, so I have felt this pain too. And there are a couple of things happening here. One, the Chinese have substantially dropped their purchases to almost zero, so they unfortunately have been using American farmers who are amongst President Trump's biggest supporters. I think he had more than 90% support. And then this was one of the biggest crops in 20 or 30 years, so it was a perfect storm. But I think we have addressed the farmers' concerns, and I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but I believe when the announcement of the deal with China is made public, that our soybean farmers will feel very good about what's going on both for this season and the coming seasons for several.
Okay, so I don't know why Bessent said he's a soybean farmer, because I don't think the guy has ever farmed a day in his life. I don't know if that was meant to be a joke. If it was, it didn't really hit. But nonetheless, the takeaway from that clip is that he thinks there will be a conclusion to get the Chinese to buy our soybeans. I mean, I would imagine Trump's going to be using NVIDIA chips as leverage, or any level of cooperation with continuing to be the largest consumer of Chinese goods to get them to just buy more soybeans, including us buying their cooking oil, which was one of the things that Trump threatened as well. And so we're going to have to see. He owns farmland. Yeah, there you go. Maybe he owns a lot of farmland, but I don't know if he's necessarily a farmer. Now, here's another clip over the weekend. I mean, take a look at Trump dancing in Malaysia. I mean, he was greeted in a very nice way by the Malaysian people as he ended up having talks with a lot of their leaders in the region, in Southeast Asia. And you got Trump dancing here. I mean, and the takeaway from him dancing is, I think there's a bit more peace that is happening in other parts of the world, which are really important because we kind of need that peace in order to continue this bull market. It's positive energy. You need a lot of that positive energy. And if we weren't having that stuff happen, I think it would obviously be a bit net worse. And so as a result, I think we're having some momentum there. We have those Brazilian tariffs, not necessarily the best in the world. Here's what Trump has had to say after meeting with the Brazilian president over the weekend as well.
Well, first of all, let me just say it's a great honor to be with the president of Brazil. It's a great country. It's a big, beautiful country. And I think they're doing well. I think they're doing very well from what I understand. And I think we should be able to make some pretty good deals for both countries. And I'm going to leave that a little bit to Jameson and Scott and Marco in different ways. Marco, less on the economic stuff. You could do it very well, but I don't think you'll have to. But I think we'll have. I think we'll be able to do some pretty good deals. We've been speaking.
Now, again, that's really important because Trump just threatened 50% tariffs on Brazil. So when he's saying, I think we'll be able to make some deals with Brazil, that's the market kind of saying, okay, so you're not going to probably have this crazy Canada tariff. You're not going to have this crazy China tariff. If you get rid of the Brazil tariffs or get to a deal, then if we can get more and more and more deals, the market shouldn't be that upset. Here's Trump talking about the completion of a ton of other trade deals with Indo-Pacific partners over the weekend as well.
Ties of commerce to strengthen our common security and to really promote strongly stability, prosperity, and peace for all of the countries in this room and long beyond this room. That's why I'm delighted that in addition to the agreement with Malaysia this week, we're also signing or nearing completion on trade deals with many other Indo-Pacific partners from Cambodia to Japan to South Korea. We're delighted to forge richer partnerships on energy technology, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, and other industries. The United States is having its golden age.
So you kind of get the point. The point is a lot of deals are being signed, and hopefully these deals manifest in like actual frameworks that are tangible. But as a market participant, whether you hate the deals, love the deals, you think Trump's a great deal maker, you think he's a horrible deal maker, the market, as we can see right now, is reacting in a positive way to these deals. And if this deal flow doesn't necessarily stop and you actually get some legitimacy behind the deals, like some real details on how the deals will be executed, I think we might get some green. I think we might end up getting some green. So it's not wearing the Knicks hat because they're losing to the Heat right now. Exactly. That's why. Dude, Curry over the weekend, this guy is crazy, bro. Hit both of those threes, overtime. Absolutely incredible. SoFi right there. That's at 30. There you go, 30.09. Iran, are we at 67? We are at 66.80 on Iran, continuing to get some of that momentum. AMD at 260. It was at 263 for a second. Nebius right there. Look at that, 123. This thing fell all the way to 94. NVIDIA trying to push 190 again. I mean, again, it's hard as a market participant to look at what's happening and think, oh my goodness, I should be scared of everything that's taking place, because again, we just had that drawdown over the past couple of weeks, and you know that was the quote unquote scary part. But it just seems like more and more people bought the dip. Here's the last clip on Besant talking about what happened with Canada. So remember the Canada situation, which by the way, on Saturday, and I don't even know if this is going to be fully true, but Canada ran that Reagan ad. Trump got pissed off about it. Trump tweeted yesterday that he is going to be increasing all of the tariffs on Canada by 10% based on how mad he was about that Reagan ad. I mean, we'll see if that ends up playing out. Canada actually pulled down the ad. So they stopped playing the ad on Friday. Here's what Besant had to say about it.
Major trade issue, which is Canada, of course. This week, President Trump abruptly broke off trade talks with Canada and put another 10% tariff on Canada in response to an ad that the government of Ontario ran. It features former President Ronald Reagan. Why is the president setting trade policy based on a television ad he doesn't like?
Well, Kristen, let's think about this. This is a kind of propaganda against U.S. citizens. You know, it's psyops. Why would the government of Ontario? I'm told that they have spent or were planning to spend up to $75 million on these ads to come across the U.S. border. So what was the purpose of that other than to sway public opinion? And you know, it's some kind of propaganda that the premier of Ontario unilaterally launched.
Will the 10% tariffs apply to all Canadian goods, Mr. Secretary?
Kristen, I've been traveling since this unfortunate event happened. I know that the ad's been taken down. So, you know, we'll have to see. But I just think it was terrible judgment by this premier, you know, who has a bit of a reputation for being a hothead.
Does the president know if the tariffs will apply to 10% tariffs will apply to all Canadian goods? Has he made a determination about that?
Well, I'm sure he knows, and I'm sure the Ambassador Greer knows. But again, you know, we're here out in Asia, and we're doing these big trade deals out in Asia. We just signed the Malaysian deal today, which was fantastic. And you know, I've been spending the past 2 days negotiating with the Chinese. So you know, whatever is going on back in North America, I think is taking second fiddle to President Trump's leadership out here in the Pacific.
Okay.
So you got this Canada thing that might turn into something, might not turn into something. You've got the China stuff that's hopefully going to turn into something more positive. And then you've got this India deal along with other Indo-Pacific partners that Trump might be able to meaningfully get some cooperation on. I mean, again, from a trade deal perspective, it looks like things are headed in the right direction. By the way, just to put some context to this, the reason why we took a breather over the past 2 weeks is because of trade. It's because of Trump and China beefing. Now, granted, one could argue that we were bound for a breather because things were just running too hot. And I think all of us kind of felt it to an extent, right? Things were just getting a bit too excited, and it's healthy to take a breather. But you needed a catalyst, and that, you know, it was a $20 billion crypto liquidation on October 10th because of that Trump Truth Social China thing. So the reason the market tanked over the past 2 weeks is because of China. And so it makes sense that the market's hitting new all-time highs as we've absorbed all of that selling pressure and the China stuff might be resolved, which is why it seems like we might be in a much better spot. So there you go. How are we feeling? Are we feeling that this continues? That is my question. We got a couple other headlines that we'll talk about, but in general, I mean, once this China stuff came out, particularly over the night in Malaysia, morning in at least the United States, I mean, I at that moment, it kind of felt like we were off to the races. Look at Google right there, 263.55. Google did hit 267 at one point. AMD again is still holding 260. Palantir 190 was that all-time high. Maybe it cracks that. Do we think it continues, or do we think there's still a little bit of selling pressure that needs to get worked out of the system before we can make that all-time high? I don't know. I think there's a shot. We continue to keep this going. Tom Lee, he continues to be pretty excited about this market. In his Sunday note, I'll read right here the specific quote that he said. Mark Newton, by the way, still thinks, this technical analyst still thinks that there could be some November choppiness, which is fair. But overall, they're pretty bullish on 7,000 by end of the year. You got Tom Lee basically saying, it could be argued that Friday's morning release of September CPI data removed much of that uncertainty, though it must have helped that the numbers came in dovish. I forgot to mention that. I mean, Friday, we had a really good CPI in the morning, which was important. Lower than consensus expectations. That bolstered expectations of another rate cut when the results could be seen in a range of indices, the S&P, the small caps, etc. All four posted positive weeks, with the Russell 200 leading the way with a 2.5% weekly gain. And then Mark Newton says, I don't care if the market's been sort of choppy and range bound. In my view, despite the choppy short-term trends, longer-term trends are intact. And with sentiment remaining subdued, it seems to be that the path of least resistance remains to the upside over the next couple of weeks. And earnings are going to really help paint that story if we end up getting some good earnings starting this week. BitMine right there, 53.17. That is green as well. Are we pricing in the rate cuts? I definitely think the rate cuts are priced in. However, I don't think that means the market can't go higher. Simply put, because when rates come down, the cost of capital becomes cheaper. People have to allocate money if they want to take some level of risk outside of the safeness of how they've been allocating capital, and they want to put it somewhere. So are the rate cuts priced in? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, we're trading at a pretty historically expensive valuation for a lot of reasons. Part of the reason is because we're in an easing cycle, but that doesn't mean rate cuts can't get the market to continue to go higher when it's finally announced, which is really important. There's a 96.7% chance in October that we get that rate cut, and that meeting is going to be happening on Wednesday. This guy's got a big week. Shout out to Mr. Tanner. SoFi is going to be a big one. SoFi is going to be a big one. So what do we have this week? Let's transition into some of the earnings we have. By the way, I want to show you guys this real quick. The Warren Buffett indicator is now at 223%, which means if you use the Buffett indicator, this is the most expensive stock market in history, theoretically. And again, the Buffett indicator is basically something that looks at the total market capitalization of all traded publicly stocks relative to the nation's gross domestic product, aka GDP. Now, again, the Buffett indicator has been pretty much this high over the past couple of years, not literally at this level, but it's been, getting to those all-time highs or close to those all-time highs. And the reason for that is because our GDP, our GDP relative to our stock market is in contrast, right? We are growing, but we are not growing as fast as the stock market is growing. But the reason the stock market is growing that much, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one could definitely argue that AI and the margin expansion is something that Berkshire has not really been, that fully invested in. I think Berkshire still has about $350 billion in cash, so they are still waiting for an opportunity. UNH was like the last big opportunity I think they took a lot of advantage of. That is how you explain this market from a multiple perspective, even if on other indicators it could be a bit expensive. Goldman Sachs right here. What do we got? Goldman Sachs is green overnight as well. All the banks should be pumping, which is really good for SoFi. Bank of America, yep, that's up 1%. You got all the banks making a move. So here is the earnings that we have going into next week. Tomorrow, we have a bunch of companies. I mean, they're important. Amcor is one that I have a position in, but there's, a bunch of names that are out there, not the biggest names in the world, but important names. You got Cadence, that's important for semiconductors. Whirlpool, important for the consumer. Then on Tuesday, you have SoFi and PayPal. Those are big in the morning. You have Royal Caribbean, consumer play, UPS, consumer play, Enphase, solar energy, Visa, important for the street in terms of financial systems and those sort of financial metrics continuing to be good for the consumer. You got the Cheesecake Factory, consumer, Mondelez, which, by the way, Mondelez, they're the parent company of Oreo. We had a headline this weekend, and I think this is just going to continue to take place. The makers of Oreo have trained their own video model for television advertising. They have invested $40 million in the models in AI and say it's cut production costs by 30 to 50%. Video models are continuing to advance at a rapid pace. By next year, it'll be difficult to tell if an ad is AI generated. This might actually be an interesting earning play for a lot of people to look at, just based on the fact that this stock hasn't really moved that much this year, but they are, 40 million investment, cut ad production costs by 30 to 50%. Earnings is on Monday. And then the stock is down 14% over the past 3 months. I mean, if they end up reporting some massive earnings beat or some guidance because their advertising costs, which are some of the biggest costs for a lot of these companies, go down, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of other companies that replicate that, but that could also be another consistent trend we're seeing in some of these companies. They're using AI. That AI is reducing their costs. As a result of reducing that cost, they're able to put up more EPS. As a result of putting up more EPS, the stock market continues to expand its overall multiple because these companies are showing that they can deliver more value for shareholders. And, they probably also have Steve that is helping their earnings very, very much, as he is a avid enthusiast of Oreos. But look, it's just one of those things in terms of the trend that is not slowing down when it comes to earnings. So that's what we have on Tuesday. And then Wednesday is going to be crazy. So here's my question. Let's put this in the chat. Wednesday, we have Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon. Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon. By the way, 75% of you think that we're going to get that China deal done by end of year, which I would tend to agree with. I think we're in the closest level that we could possibly get that deal. Which one outperforms from these prices today, Meta, Google, or Microsoft on Wednesday? I don't even know how we're going to listen to the earnings calls that day. It's going to just be a wild day trying to get through all these stocks. But it's going to be exciting to see. Does Bitmine? I don't even know when Bitmine has earnings, to be honest. Is like Tom Lee going to get up there and talk to analysts? Like, do they even do something like that? I feel like they have to because they're a public company. But I mean, we'll listen to it if it is happening. I think it happens. But also, he's not the CEO, so technically he doesn't need to. He's the chairman. Remember, it's different. So, Evan, do you know if Bitmine's going to actually do an actual earnings call? Sometimes these companies just don't do it. And again, what are they going to say, right? It's an ETH treasury, so it's is there that much to say? Yeah, Wednesday is also FOMC. Wednesday is also FOMC. So we're going to see as well. Okay, what did you guys say in the chat? Wow, 52% of people say the Googs. 52% of people think the Googly Googs is going to figure this out. You guys saying earnings are October 29th for BMNR? All right. So that'll be a crazy day on Wednesday then. That'll be a crazy freaking day. Open Door as well up in the overnight markets. Bitcoin, right? Wow, 115. There you go. Back to 115. We got it 2 hours ago. Then it went away. Let's see if we can hold on to it. Let's see if we can hold on. Yeah, honestly, I think I would agree with you guys. I think it's Google. I think Microsoft's going to be great. I do think Microsoft and their cloud revenue, they really blew away expectations last quarter. I don't know if they can do that twice. Google has a lot of different elements working for it that I could see that EPS beat being higher than expected. And then Meta, I think is going to be fine. I just think there's been a little bit of internal chaos in Meta from all the stuff we've been seeing. And I think Zuck is just going to have to, clean all that up. And he's going to have to show that they might be spending like crazy, but it's justified. I think Google is the clearest, though, to not be too bad. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting to see. And then you got Amazon and Apple that then report on Friday or on Thursday. And I mean, look, I don't think they necessarily have to do bad either. The takeaway from all these earnings right here is as long as we get some meaningful numbers, and all of them are going to have their quirks, right? Amazon might have some AWS issues. Google might have some search issues. I mean, all these companies are not going to be perfect. But if they're close to perfect, or if some of them actually do have perfect, like Meta and Microsoft had perfect earnings in Q2. For those that remember, Meta got to 800, Microsoft got to 560, and then they pulled back. But if we can get those blockbuster quarters, first of all, it's going to be really good for NVIDIA because we know what's going to happen with NVIDIA if the hyperscalers are doing well. Also, it's going to be good for the Nebiuses, the Irans. If the hyperscalers can put up those big daddy numbers, you would imagine Iran, Bitfarm, CleanSpark, I mean, all those companies should be getting some of that residual demand as well. That's really good for them. And it's really good, again, for the AMDs, NVIDIAs, and Broadcoms of the world that are facilitating all the chip and infrastructure to make this stuff happen. Oracle right there is also up 1% after hours or in the overnight. Yeah, maybe Grab. I mean, Grab has its earnings next week or in 2 weeks on November 3rd. I mean, again, for Grab, I've been pretty clear about it. I think you're buying a company with $7 billion in cash. At the end of the day, I do think the shorts are a bit in control, but that's why Grab has to put up some good earnings. I mean, a lot of these, and they, you know, they should force the market to give them a premium if they continue to put up good earnings. Same thing with your like Big Bear AIs of the world, right? This stock, I was looking at some of their numbers today, just to give you guys some context on Big Bear AI. They grew negative 32% last quarter. Their revenue guidance for fiscal year 2025 at the end of 2024 was 180 million. They took that down to 140 million, and they had negative gross margins. So we're talking about a stock that, again, is up a lot year to date. It was up more, but it's up 71% year to date. And when you look at their earnings, and I was just curious today, so I went back into their earnings. I'm like, oh, wow. Like in the age of AI, the company that has AI in their ticker is growing negative 32%. My question is on earnings, what do they say to kind of continue this run of being up 70% year to date? I mean, a company that's not growing at all, 30, negative. This is not Tesla. Tesla's not growing. People can handle that. This is a random AI company that probably will be important in the long term if you believe in their fundamental thesis, but right now the numbers aren't there. What do they say to get the stock to go higher? And I think I'm going to be curious this earnings cycle, a lot of these other names, what can they say to keep their momentum alive, to keep their narrative alive? Like Opendoor, quite frankly, I don't think Opendoor is going to have a massive earnings because I think Kaz just got in and he hasn't been able to implement all the stuff he wants. But Kaz is going to talk like a rock star CEO because, I mean, in the interviews I've seen already, I mean, this guy really does know how to talk. And he is going to convince the street that they are going to turn this thing around, even if the numbers on this quarter might not show it. And so I think that's what this earnings cycle is going to be about. Can Grab prove to the street they deserve to get a premium? Can Duolingo prove to the street that Apple eating their lunch is stupid? Can Rocket Lab, that trades at over 55 times price to sales, prove to the street that, hey, Neutron's the real deal? You guys have treated us really well in terms of the stock price. Don't forget that when Neutron comes, that's when the real magic starts. And so even if the numbers aren't amazing this quarter, keep in mind what's going into the future. I mean, this is going to be the story of earnings as we really get into it over the next 2 weeks, and which companies can uphold their narrative or change their narrative. I mean, PayPal, right? Can PayPal tell the street, guys, we're basically going to go private in 5 years if you don't buy the stock because we're going to buy back all the shares? Like, is there enough juice in a lot of these names? Same things with Salesforce, same thing with Amazon in terms of AWS acceleration to get the market to recognize what's going on. Yes, Big Bear AI does have a lot in the pipeline. They have 380 million in the pipeline, which is why I'm confused why the revenue growth is negative 32%. But again, these are things that they're going to have to highlight on their earnings call. And if most companies can do a good job of this. S&P 682, look at that, breaking through 682. And then hopefully we have a good earnings cycle. All right, it seems most people are excited. Most people are excited with what we've got going on. The comments on the hair are great. It's not the final hairstyle. I just said, you know what? Screw it. I don't feel like wearing a hat today. And so I haven't even got a haircut in like 2 weeks. This is just like whatever. But it's proving to you guys I do have hair. A lot of people didn't think I had hair. I think I'm bald. It's like, no, I have hair. I just usually never show it. S&P 7000 by Turkey Day. I mean, dude, if we get S&P 7000 by the end of the year or even by Thanksgiving, this would be fun. This would be very, 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 very fun to end out the year in this manner. Again, I think it's very possible now. I mean, look, we're less than 2% away from 7,000. So all those 7,000 targets, which shout out to Steve, even when the S&P fell to 4,800, he was pretty adamant that we are going to see that 7,000 range. If that can continue, then this would be pretty exciting. This was Tom Lee on Friday on his thoughts for why crypto probably is going to rally towards the end of the year.
Still expecting explosive recovery in markets. But we are above that level. And, we're 10 weeks before the end of the year and the S&P's at 6,800. I think it's still a base case then for people to say that in just a typical year, the S&P should gain another 4%. That would put us over 7,000 into the end of the year. And I think that that's sort of the minimum. But because we've got the Fed cutting, and they started in September, they've been on pause all year. That only happened twice in the last 50 years, which is 1998 and 2024. I actually think the S&P, given the skepticism that's been plaguing this market all year, we could do far better than 4%, maybe even 10% into year end.
Wow. Okay. So where does crypto fit in, especially when you're looking at how those currencies are moving versus what's happening with tariff concerns, global trade concerns, et cetera?
Crypto had a huge deleveraging event on October 10th, and part of that was triggered by the escalating tensions with U.S. and China on tariffs and trade. And that was the biggest liquidation event in 5 years for crypto. So there is still...
And it looks like that got resolved over the weekend to an extent with these productive talks with Vicent. So that's why you're probably seeing crypto get a rebound. Bitcoin just needs to stay above 115 by the end of October to have its 10th green October in a row. If it's below 115, then we would have a downtober, not an uptober. But if China was the reason for the crypto liquidation, maybe China's the reason why crypto comes back to the moon.
Those ripple effects, 2 weeks later that are plaguing the crypto market. But I think we're almost through that, because a measure like something called open interest for both Ethereum and Bitcoin are at record lows at a time when the technicals for both Bitcoin and Ethereum are flipping positive. So I think you're going to see a crypto rally into the end of the year. And it really does help to see JP Morgan say they're open to the idea of using crypto as collateral.
Yeah, I was actually going to get your thoughts on that, Tom. But in light of that, and you and I have had these conversations over the months, over the years. I can think about the conversation we had in early August where you talked about, on the exchange, where you talked about the fact that cryptocurrencies tend to be early indicators of where stocks are directionally headed, as well as indicators of liquidity in the broader market. So given what we are seeing in Bitcoin, and as that relates to the S&P 500 and arguably what we're seeing in Ethereum and what that says about the Russell 2000, I want to get your thoughts.
I think it's sending a pretty bullish signal. Part of it is it's a counterfactual statement, but crypto had the biggest liquidation event, deleveraging event in history. The number is probably multiples of what happened during FTX, and Bitcoin ends up down 3 or 4%. So I think it shows you that Bitcoin itself is proving to be a pretty good store of value, because if we had seen this happen with gold in the gold market, if there was a huge deleveraging event and gold was only down a few percentage points, we'd of course consider that a real validation. And it's also true of Ethereum, because Ethereum is seeing so much activity growth. On the L1 and the L2, because of stable coins, and it's not reflected in the price. It does take time. So to me, because
it's not reflected in the price, and going to Tom Lee's point, Zelle, which a lot of us, at least in the United States, know about, they said today they're planning to allow their users to start making international payments via stablecoins. I know Ethereum is not reflecting all the momentum we've seen in stablecoins and tokenization, but you've got people like Vlad that think tokenization is literally going to eat the financial system. You've got Larry Fink that thinks it's going to be a $4.5 trillion market. You got Vicent, who thinks stablecoins is going to get up to the $2 to $4 trillion range simply because of the demand for treasuries, which the federal government really likes because there's a buyer for U.S. debt. And then you've got the overall retail excitement because of people like a Tom Lee. By the way, the Nikkei, look at that, 50,000. That is an all-time high for Japan. That is an all-time high for Japan. Wow. Dude, in 1991, it was at 40,000. Bottomed basically in 2008 at 8,000. And now we're at 50. You got a lot more people. They're getting excited about these different asset classes. And obviously that's going to be really bullish for BitMine as well. So, again, the theme of the day, and hopefully the theme of tonight's future show continues into tomorrow. Look at Robinhood, 143.38, is bullish. And the reason I really think this is more bullish is because we went through a healthy 2-week drawdown across the entire board, and all of us probably needed to see a little bit of more pain before we get those gains. It's just natural. We were going on a hot streak literally from April till the end of September. We were on a hot streak. Now, granted, we had a 30% decline, but the point is it was just up and up and up and up, and Iran, Israel didn't take us down. Moody's didn't take us down. Trump announced 50% tariffs on the EU. That didn't do anything. And then a 3% down day because Trump says, oh, I'm tired of China's export controls. And then boom, everything goes to, it's almost like the market just needed a catalyst. And most people just said, okay, if that's the catalyst for me to get SoFi at $25, then that's what I'm going to do. Or pick whatever stock at whatever level. And that's why this is also pretty exciting. So there you go. I put in the chat what stock you really bought the dip on over the past 2 weeks. I think we're going to get some of the main targets like the BitMines, the Amazons of the world. But put in the chat, I mean, which one you really took advantage of. I think for me, it would be a little bit of BitMine, more Grab, bit of Palantir, a bit of NVIDIA, SoFi. Usual Amazon for sure, usual candidates, but it ended up so far not being the worst. Yeah, I see a lot of BitMine, a lot of Amazon, a lot of, I mean, dude, Nebius, great buys for those who got the, if you're super bullish on Iran, you got a chance to buy the dip, even if, you know, it was still elevated from where you bought it at. Cypher, Palantir, Webull. Where's Webull overnight? This thing got to freaking almost below $10. Webull right here. There you go, 1182. Dude, someone bought like a couple $million worth of freaking Webull $35 November calls. I don't know what they think is going to happen to Webull in November to get to 35, but it doesn't literally have to get to 35 for them to sell. But like, I mean, you got a lot of people that are bullish on this one going into the end of the year. Rich Tech Robotics, ASST again. Mike Alfred, he is a bigger figure in the Bitcoin community. He bought this on Friday. And look, I don't know that much about Mike Alfred. We've had a couple conversations here and there. We've talked. I mean, I've known the guy for about 2 or 3 years now, and you know, we've DM'd back and forth, and he's a friendly guy. But this thing completely pumped the stock. I mean, this thing was trading at 95 cents, and he bought $1 million worth of it. I did a little bit of digging into ASST. I did find some stuff that I think people just might have to watch out for. It's trading at 2.2x MNAV. There's a pipe coming up. There's warrants that are unlocking to the tune of 450 million. The company's only worth 800 million, so it might be diluted by 50%. I mean, there's a lot of different like internal dynamics of ASST that people have to watch out for, but it also might not matter because at the end of the day, rates are coming down. This is a Bitcoin associated asset class. And then you might just have retail wanting, you know, if they missed the open door run, they might say, all right, this is my next thing to ape into, even if it's just for a flip. So, I mean, you might have a lot of things that could create that as well. PIPE is private investment in public equity. So you have more money potentially coming in and then some money actually leaving based on what price the warrants are exercised at. So I don't know about the internal nuances to like actually tell you a fundamental thesis around ASST. I would say if you're buying it and it goes higher, it is likely because of a lot of momentum. I don't think Mike highlighted a fundamental thesis. He just said he really loves the team. And so I don't know if there is a fundamental thesis. All I know is that it could be a super big momentum play. I mean, it would not surprise me if this thing was at $10 a couple months ago. It would not surprise me if it gets back there just based on momentum. It's just a question of, you know, do you want to take the risk on if it does get there or if it doesn't? Kratos, EOSE, Grab, VG, Next. I mean, yeah, pretty much all of us, dude, bought something. Pretty much all of us bought something, which is the exciting part over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, ASTS got hit as well, but you know, that one is something that people were able to buy the dip on. Jaeger shots for the birthday. I don't know, dude. It's Monday. Do we drink on a Monday? I feel like we can't drink on a Monday, dude. I feel like drinking on a Monday is too aggressive. But it'll be a fun market close. We'll get to just chill and then talk, and hopefully we end at all-time highs, and it'll be, you know, a fun way to end out Monday. And nothing too crazy plays out. Jaeger when you ring the bell. Where's VG overnight? Does that trade overnight? VG 949 and then next. There you go, 582. Oh, wow. Next got below 6. I have to buy next eventually. I believe in Matt's DD. I just haven't taken the position yet, but eventually I'm going to buy it and just hold it for the long term. Do you think, okay, so this is interesting. Do you think that the S&P could have a blow off top tomorrow? I think there is enough good news baked in right now based on what we're seeing in the futures with, 681 on the S&P, where the blow off top would happen if there's not another catalyst to kind of keep the market excited about what's going on. And all I see over the next couple of months are catalysts. You've got earnings this week. That's a catalyst. You've got rate cuts on Wednesday. That's a catalyst. And then you still have a lot of people that are pretty bearish on the overall market. They still think there's way too much froth, yada, yada. Like, that's a catalyst because there's a bit of a wall of worry there. You've got NVIDIA potentially signing a deal to finally sell their chips into China, which may be a culmination of the trade agreement with the U.S. and China. I mean, if we get their rare earths, maybe they get our chips. Trump's been on board to do that. Even Lisa Su has offered 15% of revenues for AMD. That would be bullish for everyone. And then you've got the general AI tailwind that it doesn't seem like is slowing down either. Oh, yeah, possible government reopening. I mean, I don't know if that's ever going to happen at this point, but like, I don't know, dude. I feel like it's a little too easy to be like, well, it's topping out now because we just had a drawdown, and that drawdown made sense for a lot of reasons, and now you have healthy catalysts to get that drawdown to not be as bad. Now, you do have this macro news that no one can ignore, right? Auto loans and their delinquencies. 60 days or more past due have surged 51% over the past 15 years, specifically on auto. And we looked at a chart similar to this last week. So like, yeah, there's parts of the market that are not healthy because we have these, credit delinquencies that are not doing the best. But then again, you look at every bank's earnings, and SoFi will let us continue that trend hopefully on Tuesday. That said, delinquencies are fine. Citibank and JP Morgan literally said they're lower than expected. This is not some random bank. This Citibank and JP Morgan saying the delinquency rates that we thought we were going to get were lower than expected. The credit provision losses for TFC and a bunch of the other regional banks on Monday came in way better than expected. And then at the same time, you still have $7.4 trillion on the sidelines with $30 billion that were added to money market funds last week. I mean, again, I'm trying to find the bear case. The only bear case I had over the past couple of weeks was that, hey, maybe we're a little too frothy. We need a little bit of a shakedown. Well, we got that. We got the shakedown. It happened. So it's like, that short term, okay, this is going to be a little choppy, ended up being a buy the dip, which I think most people agreed was a good buy the dip. And now potentially we are back for this next leg higher. This is a chart on November that's also really important. Again, take a look at November right here. Over the past 10 years, S&P 500 average monthly return in November has been above 4.2%. Maybe that continues. The government is closed. Who even noticed? Yeah, I mean, look, for the people, by the way, the people not getting paid by the government obviously are noticing, but the market is not acting like they care that the government's closed. We found out the person, or at least I should say the New York Times found out the person who gave the $130 million soldier payment payroll. It's Timothy Mellon. Timothy Mellon, this guy. He's part of a American banking family. I had no idea who this guy is, but he's the grandson of Andrew Mellon, and that name should be similar to a lot of people. He was once the U.S. Treasury Secretary. And Forbes puts the Mellon family net worth at $14 billion. They put his net worth at $4 billion. Yeah, BNY Mellon, exactly. Now, I said last week, I think you need to be worth a lot more than $4 billion. I would say minimum $10 billion to give away $130 million. So maybe Forbes has his net worth wrong, but if he's only, I use quotes on only worth $4 billion, and he gave away $130 million to pay for the troops, well, that's quite incredible. That's quite incredible. I feel like he's worth more than that, but like even the fact that you have this stuff happening kind of subdues some of the impact from the shutdown, at least in the eyes of the market, which again is bullish for equities. Take a look at this. We got a couple more charts right here. Here is the NASDAQ's performance 720 days after ChatGPT's release on November 30th, 2022, compared to its performance 720 days after Netscape, which was one of the world's first browsers on the internet, released on December 19th, 1994. I mean, this chart is phenomenal. ChatGPT has grown 111% through the past 720 days. Netscape 123% through 720 days. So you're having the start of the literal internet be just slightly above the NASDAQ composite percentage change of ChatGPT, which might be the entire start to an industry that's much bigger than the internet. And that doesn't look, some of you guys remember Netscape. I mean, that's Mark Andreessen. So it doesn't look like that's slowing down anytime soon. Here's another chart on what's happening with ChatGPT. This is the projection from Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest investors in ChatGPT. They're expecting in the next 2 years for OpenAI to make $100 billion of revenue. For context, it took all the other tech companies a minimum of 6 years, most of them 10 years, to get to $100 billion of revenue. Now, again, OpenAI really has to do this because they're involved in every single freaking deal that's on the planet in regards to AI. But like, if they do, you've got that broader macro tailwind that is very important. And to help them do this, SoftBank from Japan officially has initiated the remaining $22.5 billion of its $30 billion investment in OpenAI. There was a couple of disagreements between SoftBank and OpenAI over the past couple of months. This was supposed to happen back in July. And it took them a few months to figure out exactly how they're going to do it, how they're going to deal with the nonprofit stuff, the board voting rights, all that stuff. They ended up investing $30 billion in total. They did $8 billion last July and the other $22 billion over the weekend. I mean, imagine the guy who's sending in the wire for that $22 billion investment. You got to make sure you don't mess up the name of the bank. But like, I think anytime we have a broader bearish argument for this stock market, which is, we should all pay attention to and care about and understand and like deeply try to analyze, because at the end of the day, this stuff does matter for the day to day. The broader macro theme around AI is intact. At least I haven't seen a meaningful degradation of that theme. And if that theme continues to stay intact, I mean, you're going to continue to see earnings growth. You're going to continue to see margin expansion. You're going to continue to see CapEx. And as a result, you should continue to see potentially 3.5% to 4% GDP growth over the next 4 or 5 years, which is the plan of this administration. And if that happens, that would not be the worst in the world. Gotham, thank you for the $10 super chat. Amit, thoughts on UiPath? Also, I've been watching since 2021. Appreciate it, Gotham. I have not really dug deep into UiPath. I do know I'm seeing through the stock, it is breaking out. Robotic processing automation, RPA, is something I think AI should be a tailwind for. I just don't fully know if it's the most exciting AI story, even though the valuation is a lot more compelling than some of the other AI names. So I have to look into it. I will actually hit up Sachin. Sachin, I think, was in the stock a year ago. I don't know if he's still in it, but I'll ask him and I'll try to get you some thoughts from him and see if it's worth looking into. The stock year to date on Path, is up 27%. So it has performed. QXO, Steve is getting pretty bullish on QXO. I was talking with him this morning, and ironically, I did not a deep dive, but we did a 30-minute audio show on Spaces of GXO, which was a subsidiary and a spinoff of the other company that Brad Jacobs started. But both of them in the logistics warehousing space. And so Steve is getting a lot more excited about QXO. So I'll get him on the channel this week and he can kind of lay out his thesis for why he's excited about this one as well. Chris, thank you for the $10 super chat. Happy birthday, man. Thanks for all that you do. You've given me faith in investing into Palantir and Hood through your DD on them and helping me understand these companies more in depth. Chris, appreciate you. It's been a wild, wild journey with those two names. And I think a lot of people have found their own journey on multiple names outside of Palantir and Hood. But it's been incredible because those were the two OG names that kind of started everything for this channel and for this community. So super, super exciting as we get into their earnings as well. K. Roger, thanks for the super chat. Okay, this is important. I need to share this. Thank you for reminding me about this. So your boy Jensen, look, Jensen has a lot more money than me. Jensen is obviously a lot more successful than me. That doesn't mean that Jensen doesn't jack my lines, okay? That doesn't mean that Jensen doesn't jack my freaking lines. So Jensen said in an interview over the weekend, very few people know this, but I don't wear a watch. And the reason I don't wear a watch is because now is the most important time. Just dedicate yourself to now. All I'm saying is if you go back to June 28th, I don't know if Jensen follows me on X. I don't know if he watches the streams. I don't know, but I said I don't wear a watch because the time is always now. So, your boy might be getting some inspiration from retail investors, even if he's, a big fancy CEO. Nebius right there up 5% in the overnight markets. But I think he stole my line. Okay, to be fully truthful, I kind of stole Jensen's line because Jensen has said this multiple times in the past. I don't even know if I stole it from him or if I heard it from somewhere else. But yeah, this is not the first time he said this. Even though he said most people have never heard me say this, he said this multiple times. So yeah, I think I probably stole it from Jensen first. But it's nice to think that he stole it from you. He needs to steal his payroll. I would love to steal Jensen Huang's payroll. That would be nice. Muckaby, thanks for the super chat. Iran moved their earnings closer about 2 weeks to 11.6. That is usually great news. I'm anxious, excited along with what is currently happening. Yeah, I mean, look, Iran is one of the stocks in this whole Bitcoin miner to GPU AI HPC revolution that has really shown meaningful growth, and obviously has the GPUs and the licensing facilities based on the amount of land that they have or the land that they're acquiring to execute. So I think for a lot of these names, it's also just a question of look, if you're in Iran from $10 and it's at 70, do you expect it to go to 100? Maybe. If it doesn't go to 100 and it stays stuck at 50 to 70, are you that upset? Probably not. But it's also do you think the earnings are going to be that good? Because I mean, remember, Iran was 15 last time on their earnings, got up to 28, sold off a bit, and then it had this run to 67. Can that continue? I don't know. But if you are bullish on these names, whether it's an Iran, a Cypher, a Bitfarms, a Big Bear AI, whatever it may be, you just have to be confident that the company can execute and that they deserve to hold their premium. Same thing with Hood, right? Hood's trading at a good premium. Am I confident they're going to execute in Q3? I believe so. And do I think that premium needs to expand? I think it can. If it doesn't, am I the angriest? Not really. But I would hope it does. And if you're in a bull market, you should imagine those things do expand because money's got to go somewhere. And it might end up going into those names. Yeah, Galaxy, I mean, they had a phenomenal earnings as well. Now, they sold off a bit from their earnings because, again, the stock is still up more than 150% this year, but they had a great earnings. They crushed EPS by 200%. If an Iran or a Cypher can do something like that, you're probably going to see additional premium getting onto those names, which is going to be fun for a lot of those as well. Online Fitness Coach, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Happy early birthday, man. Thank you for all you do. The hair looks amazing. Thank you. I know the hair is very controversial. This is not my official haircut or hairstyle. I know this looks like a mustache on my forehead. I get it, but it's just I said, you know what? We're gonna take the hat off today. We're gonna take it off. So appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the channel. TJ Hawkins, thank you for becoming a channel member as well. Terrence, thank you for the $100 super chat. You did not need to do that, but deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate it. Thank you for the $100 super chat. Again, guys, I said this a couple of days ago, but can we just please not send a ton of super chats tomorrow saying happy birthday? The fact that you guys are even here, it really, really means a lot. And I don't want people to spend their money just to say happy birthday. I appreciate so deeply that people care, they consume, they watch the content. We are going to do a giveaway on market close. We're going to give away some money. In Indian culture, it's always nice to give when it's your birthday. So I do want to do a giveaway, but please, please, please do not send money just to say happy birthday. I just care that people are even here in the first place. Dude, on that post I made on Friday that I couldn't make the show, I was reading the comments yesterday. First of all, the amount of comments that thought that my throat was not working correctly because of something else that had to do with the company that potentially went private or got an offer to go private last week. That was hilarious. Okay, number one, that was hilarious. But number two, the amount of love on that post of just hey, buddy, you're part of our routine. You can't just, Friday all-time highs. You can't just do that. You can't just I felt legit bad, but I also slept through the market close because after I pressed post on that community post, I knocked out. I woke up at 6 o'clock, and that's when freaking I saw Steve and Matt and all these guys were live, and I was like, oh, I'm so happy they went live so that there was some market close. But I woke up in the middle of them going live, and I didn't even know what time it was. I was just so freaking tired. But it's very, 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 very humbling. I was talking to someone else this weekend about it, but it really means a lot. The fact that people feel so deeply about the content. And I'm not perfect. I don't try to be perfect, but I try to give as many perspectives as I can to the show to make it engaging and entertaining and informative and obviously funny every single day. That goes without saying anything. But yeah, I deeply appreciate how much people care about the content. And as I'm getting older, as I turn into an uncle, an unk, as the kids say, entering the 28th year, you start to sort of reflect on your life, right? And what you've done. And I honestly, dude, I don't think over the past 3 years I've had a moment to just sit and reflect. A lot of people have asked these questions, like, have you reflected on what's happened? I mean, my mom asked that over the weekend. Have you just sat down and thought about what's happened over the past 3 years? And honestly, reading this book, it really made me sit down and reflect, because I really do think people will enjoy this book. It is a biography on Karp and his life and what he stands for and how he got to the point where he's at. And it kind of made me reflect on my own life, right? And, one of the things I reflected on was that I've been able to create this community via this show, and it means a lot to people every single day. And I just want to be as consistent as possible and make sure that we take it to the next level, whatever that may mean, and we keep it going. That's really important. Amit says 28 is the new 68. Exactly. 28 is the new 68. But I'm very, 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 very grateful every day for people that consume the content. I want to continue to get better, want to continue to get more guests, want to continue to just make the content more data-driven. I think one of the reasons the show works is because there's a lot of charts, a lot of analysis. Shout out to our boy Cactus Jack. He is making it a lot more easier for me to do my job, even though I just made a grammatical mistake, because you can't say more and easier, because more already represents the ER on the easy part. But nonetheless, I don't know how to talk in the first place anyway. But he's made it basically more productive for me to actually get the job done every day. And, I think we can do a lot more stuff over the coming years to keep making it good. So there we go. I'm excited. I am excited. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Means a lot. I did not add to Amcor. Last time I added to it was at 30.5. So I think my average on it is 30.7, something like that on Amcor. So we'll see what they show up for earnings tomorrow. But we got a lot of companies that are putting up earnings, and it's going to be a big week. It's going to be a big, big, big week. We all thought you were on a grinder day. Yeah, I just went with it. I just commented. I was like, yeah, the date was great. There was 80 comments, and then 15 of them were like, oh, he was obviously on a grinder date. I was like, you know what? Sure. If that's what everyone thinks. I was sleeping, but if everyone thinks I was on a grinder date, then that's what it was. That's what we got. Calling out his mistake before we do. He's evolving. Yes, exactly. Siege, thank you, man, for the super chat. I appreciate you, brother. You don't have to send this, but thank you for the super chat. It means a lot. And yeah, again, I just appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate everyone being here. So we'll be back tomorrow on the market open. We'll see what we can do, and I think it's going to be a fun market open if this withstands. I don't think Trump says anything that derails it. Trump is going to be in South Korea, I think, in the next couple of days anyway. So hopefully we get some good negotiations with these trade talks. Maybe we get a bit of a sell-off tomorrow just because there's a lot of price action baked in. I think that's probably just eventually going to be interpreted as a buy the dip if the catalysts continue to remain how they remain. And then this week's going to be crazy, folks. We got a big show tomorrow to preview everything we got going on. Then Tuesday, we got SoFi. I think Steve will be live with me Tuesday. Oh, we have UNH on Tuesday as well. So SoFi, UNH, PayPal in the morning. Those are going to be massive. And then Wednesday, I don't even know how Wednesday's going to play out, but you have the FOMC, then you have Meta, Microsoft, Alphabet. I think I might do a full day stream on Wednesday. I think we might go a full 10 hours on Wednesday. We haven't done that since May. I think we might do that. And we'll keep going from there. So very excited. Very, very, very excited. Are you going to cut a cake on live? I'm not getting a cake. I went home for the weekend, so I'm not even going to see my parents tomorrow. I saw them over the weekend. We had a dinner, so we celebrated the birthday a day early. And yeah, again, I'm just not interested in doing anything crazy for my birthday, like going to Vegas. I thought I wanted, but there was so much traveling for the first 9 months of the year. I am just happy to be at home and chill. So yeah, I'm really happy to just spend the birthday at home, working, spending with you guys on the close, and keep going from there. Another year on planet Earth. Nutima, thank you for the super chat. Watch your channel every day. Thank you, Mitt. Thank you for being here. thank you all for being here again every single day. It truly, truly means the world. It is the most blessed position I could ever imagine myself being in. Part of this book about Karp is just the crazy parts of his life that got him to. He joined Palantir at 34 years old. He had already lived 34 years doing tons and tons of crazy stuff. There's a part of the book where it says he wanted to make $250,000 and then go to Germany and basically just live the rest of his life. He thought he only needed $250,000 saved in a nest egg, and then he could just go off and go do whatever the hell he wanted and live his life. And he ended up being the CEO of a company worth $400 billion. I mean, it's just crazy where life goes sometimes, but just unbelievably grateful for the people that have chosen to be part of this journey and have been here for the past couple of years. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. I will send you all, if you would like to go to Steve's stream, he is live right now, talking alternative assets. We already know what to do. CRN, spam in the chat for those that want to be there. I'll be back on Monday morning. Got a lot to talk about tomorrow, a lot to get into. Hopefully we get some more updates on China. We got earnings this week. And let's see if we can keep going for these all-time highs and keep this going from here. Thank you, everybody. Deeply appreciate you all. I will see you guys tomorrow morning, Monday, and then on the market close, we'll do the giveaway, and we'll have a little bit of a fun birthday stream as well as we get into year 28. So thank you, everybody. Good night. Love you all. I'll see you guys on Steve's stream in the chat. CRN. We already know what to do. Every time we come in with like a mob. Dude, Steve's part of the mafia, but we're like the real mob, bro. When we come into that stream, we let him know what's up. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys Monday morning. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.